For the longest time, the global perception of India in the defense world was this: a country with a huge military appetite but limited production capability. A buyer, a follower, dependent on others for its protection. And that perception, once upon a time, wasn't entirely wrong. For decades, India relied heavily on imported weapons, fighter jets from Russia, submarines from Germany, rifles from Belgium, radars from Israel, and spare parts from everywhere else. It was like patchwork armor for a sleeping giant. But then something extraordinary happened. Quietly, steadily, and unapologetically, India began to change the narrative. It stopped begging for security and started building it. This transformation didn't begin in the labs or factories, it began in the mind. That's always where real revolutions start. When a nation stops seeing itself as weak, when it decides that self-respect is more valuable than convenience, when it recognizes that depending on others for survival is not strategy, it's surrender. That's when the shift begins. That's what India did. It shifted its mindset. And that's why the world, especially the United States, is shocked today, not just at the hardware, but at the willpower behind it. Look at the Tejas fighter jet, a fully indigenous, multi-role light combat aircraft that many said India could never build. It was mocked, delayed, criticized, and yet it flies. Not only flies, but performs. The Tejas represents more than just a machine. It symbolizes national resilience. When a country produces its own wings, it proves it doesn't just want to fly, it knows how to. Then there's the Arjun main battle tank. Sure, it took time, and it wasn't perfect from day one. But perfection isn't the goal in innovation. Progress is. India didn't import shortcuts. It endured trial and error. It built, broke, rebuilt, and refined. Every mistake was a step forward. Every failure taught engineers how not to fail the next time. You see, true power is never handed over. It is forged. And that's what's happening in India's defense sector. You might wonder, why does this matter so much? Why is indigenous defense capability such a big deal? Because when you control your defense, you control your destiny. When your radar systems, missiles, aircraft, and submarines are designed by your own people, tested on your own terrain, and upgraded with your own vision, you're no longer just defending your land, you're defending your future. You're no longer a customer in the global arms market. You're a creator. And creators shape the rules. This is the psychological leap that most countries never make. Many powerful nations have money, but no self-reliance. They can buy weapons, but they can't build character. India, on the other hand, decided to take the long, difficult, and often painful route to sovereignty. And it's working. Today, India exports defense equipment to over 85 countries. Let that sink in for a second. The very country once laughed at for its outdated rifles is now supplying cutting-edge systems to other nations. This isn't just military success. It's economic strategy. It's diplomatic leverage. It's psychological warfare without firing a bullet. Even the INS Vikrant, India's first indigenous aircraft carrier, is not just a ship. It's a floating statement. It says, we're no longer waiting for someone else to protect us. It says, we have entered the ocean of global power on our own terms. When that carrier was launched, it wasn't just India that took notice. Washington did too. Because when a country like India, with its size, population, and strategic location, begins to arm itself independently, it changes the entire geopolitical map. But here's the deeper truth, the philosophical truth. Weapons are just tools. The real weapon is will. The will to say, we'll build what we need. The will to believe in our scientists, our engineers, our soldiers. The will to suffer delays and criticism and setbacks and still not give up. This is what India has demonstrated. And it's what's making the world, especially America, take a second look. Because in the 21st century, Domination isn't about how many weapons you own. It's about how many of those weapons you don't have to ask someone else for. The United States has seen this pattern before. China did it in manufacturing, Israel in intelligence, and now India in defense. The shock isn't just that India is catching up. It's that it's doing it its own way. So, as we talk about the 10 advanced Indian weapons that are turning heads across the globe, remember, the real story isn't just in the steel, the missiles, or the tanks. The real story is in the mind of a nation that finally said enough. Enough waiting, enough borrowing, enough doubting. And that, more than any warhead, is what truly redefines power. Because when a nation stops importing courage and starts manufacturing confidence, no superpower can ignore it. If you want to understand the true reason why America is shocked by India's weapons program, you have to look beyond the missiles, the tanks, the numbers. You have to go deeper into the minds behind them. Because what's really catching the world off guard is not just what India is building, it's who is building it. Think about this. The same country that sends rockets to Mars at a fraction of the cost of NASA, the same scientists who mastered space navigation and cryogenic technology are now channeling that same genius into the defense sector. The brilliance of ISRO didn't stay limited to space. It spilled over, and when you combine scientific genius with military purpose, you get something far more powerful than weaponry. You get weaponized innovation. What DRDO and ISRO have done is not just develop technology. They've merged two types of intelligence, one that looks outward and one that defends inward. It's rare, it's dangerous for the status quo. And most of all, it's surprising, especially to those who never expected India to be a force in high-end defense research. Here's what people don't see. India's approach to weapons is no longer reactive. It's proactive, predictive. It doesn't just respond to threats, it anticipates them. That's the power of research-driven defense. Look at the anti-satellite weapon test in 2019. One small missile, one Indian-made satellite, and suddenly India was the fourth country in the world with space warfare capability. That single act rewrote India's image in the defense world. It said, "We're not waiting for your permission to enter this league. We just entered." And the message reached Washington loud and clear. But the real story here is more psychological than physical. You see, innovation is not just the act of creating something new. It's the belief that you can, that you should, that your version is just as valid, just as effective, if not better, than the established powers. That's the mindset that DRDO and ISRO now embody. It's a shift from imitation to imagination. America has always viewed innovation as its domain. Silicon Valley, MIT, DARPA, this is where future weapons are usually born. But now they're watching as Indian labs, Indian universities, Indian startups begin to crack codes, launch prototypes, and test capabilities that rival the best in the West. It's unsettling because it's unexpected. India didn't just catch up with traditional defense powers by copying them. It did something smarter. It started rethinking the entire model. Why build what others build when you can build what they can't imagine? Take quantum communications, for example. India is now developing quantum key distribution systems. Next generation encryption that's virtually unbreakable. This is not just about secure emails or encrypted chats. This is about national security in the age of cyber warfare. Whoever controls quantum controls the future. And India is now a serious contender in that race. Or take the developments in high-altitude UAVs. Drones that can fly for days, gather intelligence, strike with precision, and disappear without a trace. These aren't imported toys. These are indigenous, AI-driven, battle-hardened systems developed right here. DRDO's Gatak project, for example, is pushing the boundaries of autonomous strike technology. These aren't dreams. They're in development. And the world is noticing. And that's the philosophical heart of all this. When you mix ancient wisdom with modern vision, when you combine a 5,000-year-old civilization's discipline with the daring of today's youth, you don't just create technology, you create a new kind of power. One that's not just measured in megatons or missile range, but in clarity of purpose. You see, American shock doesn't come from what India is doing. It comes from the speed at which India is doing it. It comes from the realization that this isn't a fluke or a phase. It's a strategy, a long-term, deliberate evolution. And it's built not on borrowed blueprints, but on bold ideas. This is why the West is paying attention. Let's take a second to look at the primary overall contrast. A more stuffed, bald German boss and a West Side German owner. Because they finally understand India's real weapon is not the machine, it's the mind. The Indian mind. The same mind that solved zero, cracked space travel, and built billion-dollar startups out of poverty is now focused on national defense. And here's the truth. When a billion minds awaken, no power on earth can stop them. So as you think about these weapons, these systems, these breakthroughs, don't just admire the metal. Respect the mentality. This is not about destruction. It's about dignity through deterrence. It's about creating peace by becoming too strong to challenge. That's the new India. And the world, whether it likes it or not, is being forced to adjust to this new reality. Speed is not just a technical metric. It's a psychological advantage. In the world of warfare, whoever strikes first, fastest, and most precisely controls not just the battlefield, but the mind of the enemy. And this is exactly where India shocked the world, especially America, by transforming speed itself into a superpower. Let's talk about the BRAHMOS missile. If there's one symbol of India's rise in modern weaponry that truly made military analysts in the West sit up, it's this: a supersonic cruise missile that flies at nearly 3 times the speed of sound. That means if it's coming at you, you don't just have less time to react, you have no time to think. And that's the real power of BRAHMOS. It forces decisions. It disrupts planning. It makes conventional defense systems look slow, confused, even obsolete. But BRAHMOS isn't just a fast missile. It's a fast statement. It says, we're not just catching up, we're redefining the rules. And this is where India has taken a turn that few expected. Because BRAHMOS isn't an isolated project. It's part of a broader philosophy that precision, speed, and unpredictability will define the wars of tomorrow. Not brute force, not size, but timing. And timing, as we all know, is everything. The collaboration behind BRAHMOS, India, and Russia is important, but even more important is the fact that India is now taking the lead in adapting and miniaturizing this missile for multiple platforms, from land launchers to fighter jets to submarines, and now even for smaller vessels and mobile units. What America didn't expect was how quickly India would move from developing such a weapon to operationalizing it across all domains. Sea, air, land. In every space, BRAHMOS is becoming a signature of India's ability to strike fast, strike hard, and strike smart. And it's not stopping there. India is already working on the next generation, BRAHMOS CI, a hypersonic variant. We're talking Mach 7 speed, 7 times the speed of sound. At that velocity, the distinction between strategy and execution disappears. Your window to respond is not minutes, it's seconds. Hypersonic weapons are the next great race. And while the United States has been vocal about developing such systems, India has quietly taken significant steps. Without the fanfare, without the noise, just results. And that's what's bothering some in Washington. Because for the first time, they're watching a country they didn't expect, India, emerge as a serious player in first strike deterrence. Not through nuclear threats or massive troop movements, but through targeted, intelligent, and lightning-fast capability. Now here's the deeper truth. Speed, when mastered, does something more than just improve response time. It changes the psychology of power. A slow weapon can be tracked, intercepted, neutralized. A fast weapon lives in the realm of fear. It creates uncertainty. It creates doubt and erodes confidence. And in global military strategy, these mental effects are often more effective than physical destruction. This is what the West, and especially America, is realizing. That India's pursuit of speed is not just about missiles, it's about mind games. It's about making sure any potential adversary thinks twice before acting. It's about flipping the balance of power, not by confrontation, but by preparation. And everything that comes from lack of confidence to more confidence allows a successful outcome. And here's something even more fascinating. BRAHMOS is not just a deterrent, it's an export. India is now supplying this weapon to friendly nations, like the Philippines, and more countries are lining up. This shifts India from being just a consumer of weapons to becoming a provider of strategic influence. Arms exports are not just transactions, they're relationships. They're diplomacy with an edge. And when countries start looking to India for protection and partnership, that changes India's role in the world order entirely. Think about that for a second. A missile that was once viewed as an internal achievement is now becoming a global asset. That's what shocks the West, because they expected India to be strong, but not this fast. They expected improvement, but not leadership. And that's the surprise. But as with everything we've talked about, the real transformation isn't in the metal. It's in the mindset. India decided that speed is no longer a luxury, it's a necessity. That waiting for technology to be handed down is a form of weakness, and that true sovereignty means being able to act, strike, and decide on your own time. So what we're seeing isn't just the evolution of a missile, it's the evolution of a philosophy, a belief that time, if mastered, becomes a weapon of its own. And here's what I'll leave you with. In a world that's moving faster every day, economically, technologically, and militarily, the countries that survive aren't the strongest. They're the ones who move first. The ones who don't wait. And now the world is waking up to the fact that India is no longer following time. It's setting it. There's a kind of power that doesn't make noise. It doesn't show up on news headlines. It doesn't march in parades or flash in military expos. And yet, it's often the most dangerous kind because it operates in silence, in shadows, in code, in orbits far above the earth or deep inside unseen networks. And this is where India has surprised the world the most, especially America. Not with what's visible, but with what's invisible. The modern battlefield is no longer just land, sea, and air. It now includes space and cyberspace. Domains where war is waged not with bullets, but with data, with signals, with disruption. And India, without a history of colonial conquests or aggressive military campaigns, has entered this arena not just as a participant, but as a strategic thinker. Let's take a moment to reflect on the 2019 anti-satellite Mission Shakti. That moment changed everything. India didn't just destroy a satellite, it sent a message. It demonstrated that it could neutralize space assets with precision. In the 21st century, satellites are more than cameras in the sky. They are lifelines for navigation, communication, surveillance. If a nation can take down your satellites, it can blind you without firing a single shot on the ground. That's the power India revealed that day. And quietly, American analysts took note, because only 3 other nations, the US, Russia, and China, had ever demonstrated that ability before. Now, India was part of that club. But that was just the beginning. What most people don't realize is that India's strength in space is not just about launching things into orbit. It's about integrating space into defense strategy, surveillance satellites that track troop movements, geoimaging systems that monitor borders in real time, navigation platforms like IRNSE that allow India to operate independently of GPS, which is controlled by the US. These aren't just achievements. They're acts of psychological independence. When a country no longer relies on foreign systems to guide its missiles, manage its fleets, or direct its drones, it reclaims more than capability. It reclaims sovereignty. Now let's descend from space and enter cyberspace. This is where India is building strength in silence, and that silence is loud. Cyber warfare is the new nuclear. It's about paralyzing economies, jamming military networks, disrupting communications, even hacking the trust in an entire system. Today, one well-executed cyber attack can cause more chaos than a physical bomb. And India, understanding this, has begun developing cyber defense and offense mechanisms that are deeply integrated with its armed forces, intelligence networks, and national command structure. Few countries in the world, very few, have successfully unified cyber strategy under military and civilian coordination. India is quietly doing just that. Agencies like the Defense Cyber Agency and organizations working under NTRO, National Technical Research Organization, have become the front lines of a new kind of warfare, where battles are won not by who fires first, but by who thinks faster. And here's the most important part. India's rise in these invisible domains didn't happen by accident. It happened because of a deep philosophical understanding that in modern times, what you cannot see can still defeat you. India realized that in the age of drones, satellites, AI, and cyber attacks, traditional strength must be complemented with invisible strength. This is not about showing muscle. It's about building mind space, strategic depth, deterrence that isn't broadcasted but deeply understood. What's more, India isn't loud about these advancements. And that's what unsettles the West. You see, when America builds a weapon, there's a press release. When China makes a move, there's a parade. But when India builds capability, there's usually a pause, followed by quiet action. And in global power dynamics, silence is the most unnerving noise. It signals calm confidence. It signals unpredictability. It makes you wonder, what else are they working on that we don't know about? That's where the shock really lies, in the realization that India has stopped announcing itself. It has started preparing without fanfare, advancing without applause, evolving without external validation. And in the realm of defense, that kind of maturity is more threatening than any missile. So let's step back and look at the bigger picture. India's greatest leap in defense isn't just about weaponry. It's about understanding the invisible dimensions of modern conflict. Space, cyber, electromagnetic spectrum, AI-driven decision warfare. These are not science fiction anymore. These are strategic realities. And India is no longer on the outside looking in. It's right there in the room where the future is being written. And maybe that's what America didn't expect. They expected India to be defensive. But India is now becoming predictive. They thought India would follow. But India is beginning to lead in domains where power is quiet but absolute. So the next time someone asks what makes a country truly powerful, remind them, it's not just about tanks or jets. It's about how well a nation sees, thinks, and adapts in silence. Because the most dangerous kind of strength is the kind you don't see coming. In war, just like in business, the advantage doesn't always belong to the biggest player. It belongs to the smartest, the fastest to adapt, the one who sees the shift before others do. And right now, in the world of defense, that shift is all about intelligence. Not just human intelligence, but artificial intelligence. The future battlefield will not be decided by who has more soldiers, but by who has smarter machines. And once again, this is where India is quietly moving ahead, surprising not just America, but the entire world. Because here's what's happening. India is building a new class of weapon, not ones that simply obey commands, but ones that can make decisions, analyze data in real time, identify threats, and act faster than any human ever could. This is the age of AI-powered warfare. And India is no longer watching from the sidelines. Now, let's be clear. America has led in AI research for decades. Silicon Valley, DARPA, the Pentagon. But what they didn't expect was that India would move so quickly from research to application. The US thought India would take years to develop autonomous drones, robotic swarms, or loitering munitions. But India did it in half the time and did it with indigenous innovation. Take the case of the Rustam drone series, now evolving into combat-ready variants. These UAVs are not just surveillance tools. They're being equipped to carry out autonomous strikes, respond to dynamic threats, and make split-second decisions based on AI-generated battlefield data. That's not just a leap in hardware, it's a leap in thinking. But that's only part of the story. Look at what India is doing with loitering munitions. Essentially smart drones that wait patiently over a combat zone, identify targets through advanced vision systems, and strike at the perfect moment. They don't need constant remote control. They're trained to observe, analyze, and act. And they do it faster, more accurately, and with less risk to human life. You see, this is the key. Reducing risk, increasing intelligence. In traditional warfare, you sent people into danger. In AI-driven warfare, you send thinking machines instead. Machines that don't panic, that don't tire, that don't hesitate. And when a country starts building these systems, it doesn't just gain a tactical edge, it gains a philosophical advantage. Because it shows the world that it values precision over destruction, strategy over spectacle. That's what India is doing right now, building smart systems for smart wars. Not because it wants to fight more, but because it wants to fight less by making any potential enemy think twice before acting. And let's not forget another important layer, data warfare. Every drone, every sensor, every satellite feeds data into massive AI systems. India has now built command structures where that data is no longer just stored. It's understood. AI algorithms comb through thousands of signals, movements, and satellite feeds in real time, giving commanders an edge that's invisible but priceless. This isn't about brute strength. This is about mental agility. On a national level, even in robotics, India is building unmanned ground vehicles that can patrol dangerous terrain, detect landmines, deliver supplies, or neutralize threats autonomously. These machines are not science fiction anymore. They're being tested, refined, deployed. And that's the part that America finds most surprising. Not that India is building such machines, but that India is doing it independently, without depending on foreign tech giants. Because here's the deeper truth. AI isn't just software. It's a philosophy, a way of thinking that says we will outthink before we outgun. And when a country embraces that mindset, its power is not measured in weapons. It's measured in readiness. That's why America is watching closely now, because India, with its combination of scientific minds, IT infrastructure, and military clarity, has become a serious player in autonomous combat systems. It's no longer just about numbers. It's about adaptability, flexibility, intelligence at scale. And what most nations don't understand is that AI doesn't just enhance weapons. It changes the purpose of warfare itself. It makes it more precise, less wasteful, more strategic, less reactive. India, by investing in AI at the core of its defense systems, is essentially saying, we don't want war, but if we must prepare, we will do it smarter than anyone else. And this, my friends, is what true deterrence looks like in the 21st century. Not screaming power, but calm confidence. Not fighting wars, but preventing them. Through systems so advanced, so intelligent, that no one dares to test them. Because in the future of war, it's not about who can build the biggest army. It's about who can think the fastest. And now the world is learning. India can. Let me ask you something deeper than strategy. Deeper than weapons, tactics, or technology. What truly defines a powerful nation? Is it the number of missiles it owns, the size of its army, the sophistication of its AI? Or is it something else entirely? Something invisible, yet unmistakably strong. Its intent. And this is where India stands apart. This is what America and much of the world still struggles to fully understand. India's rise in defense is not driven by a hunger to dominate. It's driven by a commitment to never be dominated again. Every country builds weapons, but very few ask themselves why. Some do it to expand, others to intimidate, a few to sell. India, however, builds to balance, to create deterrence, not destruction. This is where wealth begins after defeat. And this is where, unlike any other people I have come across, India hit it right on the head. India has more to lose than to gain, and this is not a battle to the death. And this is where India stands apart, to create deterrence, not destruction. It's not a country obsessed with war. It's a civilization rooted in peace. But when a peace-loving nation decides to arm itself, the world should pay very close attention, because power in the hands of the ambitious is dangerous. But power in the hands of the disciplined, that is something rare and transformative. India has always believed in strength with restraint. That's why even after becoming a nuclear power, it adopted a no first use policy. It wasn't about weakness, it was about wisdom. In a time when everyone was racing to show their nuclear teeth, India quietly said, "We'll only use ours if we must." That kind of clarity doesn't come from politics, it comes from philosophy. And that's something you won't find in most countries' military doctrines. Because while they talk about power, India talks about responsibility. While others design for aggression, India designs for balance. Now think about that for a second. A nation that can destroy but chooses to deter. A nation that has the means but prefers the mind. A nation that could flex its strength but instead shows its silence. That's not a weak position. That's the ultimate form of self-control. That is real strength. And yet, this is exactly what makes India's advanced weapons so shocking to the West, especially to a country like the United States, which has grown used to equating military development with geopolitical ambition. They expected India's weapons to come with a grand agenda, a global strategy, a projection of dominance. But what they found instead was something far more unsettling. Purpose without provocation. And that's what they don't know how to respond to. Because how do you intimidate a country that has no intention of playing your game? How do you corner a power that isn't chasing territory but just ensuring it's never cornered again? This is where India becomes deeply unpredictable, because its weapons are built on principles, not paranoia. And those principles come from thousands of years of civilization, from philosophies that taught restraint before retaliation, thought before action, vision before violence. This isn't a strategy India invented in the 21st century. It's a mindset that's been evolving for centuries. But don't mistake peace for passivity. India's message is clear. We don't want to fight, but we won't be caught unprepared again. This is a country that remembers its history, that remembers colonial exploitation, betrayal, and forced dependence. The redistribution, retribution, and the reform. This is a country that remembers colonial exploitation, betrayal, and forced dependence. So now when it builds missiles, it's not trying to scare the world. It's simply ensuring the world never dares to exploit it again. That clarity is what gives India's weapons their real weight. Not just how far they can fly, but why they were built in the first place. And this is something that the world, especially younger generations, needs to learn and reflect on. That true power is not in the weapon itself, but in the decision not to use it. That the highest form of strength isn't dominance, it's discipline. And that's where India is setting a global example that very few are bold enough to follow. Because in the end, any country can build a machine, but very few can build a philosophy strong enough to guide that machine with restraint, with clarity, and with maturity. India is doing exactly that. So yes, the West is shocked at how far India has come, shocked at the sophistication of its weapons, but even more shocked at the calm with which India wields them. Because that calm is not a performance. It's a choice, a message, and maybe even a warning. Not the kind that says, we're coming for you, but the kind that says, don't come for us. And that, in the modern world, is the loudest silence of all.